welcome, friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As folks are popping in, we're so happy you're here. My name is Hunter. My pronouns are he, they, and I am very excited for this chat. We have an incredible panel today. Before we jump in, please let us know where you're calling in from. I'm calling in from New York City, originally from Los Angeles, but would love to hear where everybody is. Feel free to turn on your cameras if you like, no pressure, but you're welcome to, of course. We love seeing your shining faces. Look at this. We have so many people jumping in. This is great. Oh, we got more New York City. We got Columbia. We got Missouri. We got Austin. Oh my gosh. I love our global community. This is so great. Okay, friends. So we have such a wonderful collaboration event for you here it's brought to you by us, Power to Fly. We got Talent Collective, and we're going to be cultivating and building high performance lean teams. And we got some pretty amazing people here today from Power to Fly and Zapier. So I'm so happy to welcome you all here. And we are super excited to dive in deeper on this topic. So before we jump in, I want to touch on what we'll be talking about today. So some of the biggest challenges organizations are facing today. It's increased productivity levels while juggling smaller teams. We know this is a big thing going on right now. So first, let's talk about DE&I and understanding how we can transition to a productivity approach. And then we're going to explore what are the factors that drive productivity. You know, if someone just says work faster, that's usually doesn't work very well. So really look at that, how to be more productive and what really drives productivity, and see some data, because we know data is chief. That's what drives everything, and that we know, so that what data that connects to the L&D investment or the lack of it. And finally, explore some concepts being used in the L&D field to address productivity challenges such as talent density. So a little bit about the code of conduct here before we jump in. You can read this here. We just ask you to be kind and thoughtful in all of your interactions, both with our speakers here and with your fellow attendees in the chat. Also, feel free, like I mentioned earlier, you can turn on your camera, and that way know that we are seeing you and you are seeing us, and we love that. Please do keep your microphone off for the duration of the event, but you can ask questions in the chat at any time. We're keeping track of that, and we're going to pepper in some Q&A time as well. You can also DM me if you have a question that you would like to ask anonymously. And if you are a member of SHRM, your SHRM code is here for today's event. So you can go ahead and take a screenshot of that for a second. I love how active this chat is too. Look at all this activity. We got so many folks here. Someone's eating lunch. We are a global community. Sienna, who I'll introduce in just a moment. It's 9 p.m. over there. We are all over. We got lunch. Who's on breakfast? And who's on first? Tell me in the chat. I would love to know. Okay, we dropped the SHRM code also in the chat, so you can copy paste that as well. Okay, so we also want to thank our amazing partner, Talent Collective, for hosting us today. Thank you so much. If you'd like to learn more about Talent Collective, just scan the QR code on the screen there. And we would love to introduce Talent Collective co-founder, Krista Khan, to briefly tell you more about this amazing organization. So Krista, hello, good to see you.
Hi, Hunter. How are you?
I'm great, always, even better when I'm hanging out with you.
Oh my gosh, I so love you. And thank you for hosting today. I actually asked Hunter to be our facilitator because we've had such a good experience working with him in the past. And just want to say welcome to everyone today. Thank you for joining us. Very, very excited to have this awesome powerhouse woman panel before us. I'm excited to get into the conversation, but real quick, just a quick introduction. My name is Krista Tan, and I am one of the co-founders of Talent Collective, like Hunter mentioned. So we are a community for women in the talent acquisition space. So we've got tons and tons of great offerings for our members, from webinars like these, smaller, more intimate workshops. We have a mentorship program, peer groups that meet, masterminds, all sorts of good stuff. So if you're interested, if you're a woman in the talent acquisition space, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message. Would love to chat with you. And yeah, enjoy today's session.
Thank you, Krista. Okay, so a little bit about us here at Power to Fly. We're on a mission to fast track economic equity by upskilling and connecting underrepresented talent to roles in companies that care. And we move that mission forward by helping organizations attract, hire, retain, and develop top diverse talent, and providing opportunities for diverse talent to grow in their career. So we are very, very honored. It's a perfect fit with Talent Collective with Krista and PowerToFly. So match made in heaven. And so without further ado, let's get into it, friends. So in just a moment, I'm also excited to introduce you to a leader at Zapier, rhymes with happier, who I'm proud to say is both a partner of Talent Collective and Power2Fly. I feel like I should be singing the Matchmaker song right now. So founded in 2011. Wow, it was only 2011. Wow, what an amazing, amazing thing that Zapier has done in such a short amount of time. Zapier is the leader in AI automation. And boy, I can tell you that is the truth. By connecting over 7,000 of the most popular work apps, Zapier empowers its users to make the most of the tools they already use and to focus on what matters most. And now, without further ado, our panelists. So now I would love to introduce you to today's panelist. We have Sienna J. Brown, part of our team here at Power2Fly. Sienna is the head of growth at Power2Fly. Her mission is to build a new wave of leadership focused on inclusion and intention in the workplace so that every individual has an equal opportunity to reach their full potential. Her thought leadership around topics related to inclusion, leadership, and cross-cultural understanding has been highlighted by NPR, CNN, TEDx, Insider, USA Today, and more. Okay. And then we also have Tracy from Zapier, rhymes with happier today. So Tracy is the global head of talent at Zapier, a no-code automation platform, which we were talking about before. Leading a brilliant global team, she oversees talent acquisition, talent intelligence, sourcing, employer branding, diversity partnerships, internal mobility, and executive talent planning. It's a good thing your company has a lot of automation because that is a lot to do in a day, Tracy. She is committed to building inclusive and high-performing teams and is obsessed with talent density. T-shaped talent, we'll talk about what that means if you didn't know that term yet. I learned it recently too, and why automation may be the key to both. Zapier, before Zapier, Tracy's career was in the education nonprofit space. She taught for 2 years as a kindergarten teacher through Teach for America, TFA, and eventually joined TFA's recruitment team as a recruiter for the West Coast. She served as senior vice president of recruitment at Teach for America, with her 200-plus team fueling the most diverse teacher pipeline in the country, supporting thousands of teachers a year to teach in low-income, high-need schools. Tracy also holds a BA from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and an MS in education from Pace University. She is also passionate about arts access in low-income communities, systems changes in public education, and organizational diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. Outside of work, she enjoys redeeming points for travel, live theater, wine tasting, cooking, and being a mom of 2 daughters. So please give a round of a digital applause to our 2 guests today, our 2 panelists. Hello, friends. How are you? How are you?
It's great to be here. Thanks for having us. Sorry for such a long bio. You definitely could have told me to shorten it.
I was like halfway through and I was like, you know what? We're doing it. We're going to do the whole thing. I love learning about friends and it's good. We got the time. It's good. It's good. So I've got some questions for our panelists, but first I want to turn things over to Sienna to walk us through the concept of talent density. Because some of us, like, can you please tell us, like, what is that? What does that mean? Because this is not only a hot topic right now within businesses and the talent community, but also it's today's discussion. So take it away, Sienna.
Thank you, Hunter. So as we're diving in, again, like what Hunter was saying, I just want to kind of give us a little bit of what is talent density really? How does it relate to lean teams? And why is it something that we're all probably striving to do, even though we might not know it yet? So there we go. So talent density refers to the quality and concentration of the skills, capabilities, and performance within a company. In layman's term, it means how are we able to have employees really contribute, not just in their role, but overall towards our organizational goals and impact. And most of us probably know, but now more than ever, a lot of organizations, maybe even your own, are focusing on how are we actually engaging our people, motivating them, and fostering a culture of high performing employees to drive impact. And something we'll probably dive into the topic today is also not just high performing, but also highly engaged as well. So why is this relevant? A lot of organizations are dealing with leaner teams. They might be dealing with reorganizations and really needing to be able to understand what are the diverse skills that we do have within our organization. And not only that, but companies that are operating with smaller teams need more flexibility and, again, a focus on elevating individual skills and really engaging our employees and caring about our people. Why does this matter? Because if we're not careful, we'll have overloaded, overworked teams that struggle with productivity. We'll see that we have less opportunities for growth within organizations, and also having unengaged employees, which would lead to higher attrition rates, which would lead to even leaner teams. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can mitigate some of these things today, but I just want to share a little bit of a case study and also Netflix is seen as one of the leaders regarding the concept of talent density, right? So they really exemplify their approach by focusing on hiring individuals who don't just fill a role, but who elevate the performance of an entire team. So the fun wow stat that is often shared is that per employee, Netflix is actually able to generate nearly $3 million per employee. Now, while that might be very ambitious and aspirational, we might not all be in that same place, right? So we're really going to bring this concept that we've seen worked really well in organizations like Netflix, Google, Disney, etc., and think about what does this mean for us? You all have great talent, right? But it's really about being able to identify, engage them, and empower them to do their best work. And when we're thinking about us as leaders in this conversation today, this could be through hiring practices, right? So not just hiring an individual who might only fill a role, but really being able to understand the diversity of their skills to see how that can elevate the performance of the entire team. As managers, really focusing on how you can have high talent density to bring out the new skills and ideas from employees that you might have been working with for some time. And for smaller teams, also really being able to maximize performance while maintaining an aligned and focused team. But again, going back through a lens of engagement. So we're not just talking about productivity, but we're also talking about how are we motivating the individuals that we have so that we can have denser teams. Just a little bit of a quick example of how we do this within PowerToFly. So like Hunter mentioned earlier, we help organizations attract, hire, and engage top diverse talent that really elevate organizational impact. So these can be things like helping organizations mitigate bias in hiring practices and connecting these companies to talent who will elevate their team. So imagine You have a lean recruiting team. You have to fill different roles and you're not sure how to do it. They partner with us. Advancing inclusive organizational practices, right? So really thinking about, for the folks that you currently do have, how are you elevating them through your culture? Really leaning into skills audits, and what are the transferable skills that you might not necessarily know or recognize within your organization to help your employees either change what their career might be. So let's say going from a customer experience manager to a project manager to really elevate their desire for growth. And then also thinking about, again, the trifecta that we like to call our skills framework of not just the technical skills, but what are also the people and the business skills that we can be looking at and recognizing for folks to grow. And the last part before we get into our panel, because I know we're very excited, it's easy to understand and it's hard to implement, right? And this is our goal to really dive into today. Some questions you might be thinking about: how do we define performance? How do we hire and why? How do we value diverse skill sets? Who gets promoted? Who works on each project? Hopefully the things that we'll get into today will really be able to help you all understand how we can create a more dense talent workforce, but again, through the lens of people, which will help us lead to productivity and then also our organizational goals. So with that, Hunter, I will pass it back over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sienna. So for this next, or the remainder of it here, we're going to mostly have our screen share off so that we can see all of you, but we love that way. There we go. Nice, cozy Zoom room for all of us to see each other and ask each other questions. So feel free to ask your questions in the chat moving forward. We would love to hear from you, and I will read them on your behalf and pepper them in. So first off, I will kick us off here, and we can start with you, Tracy. So as the Global Director of Talent at Zapier, what has been your strategy for identifying and attracting the right talent that can also perform on a lean team?
That is a good and meaty question to kick off with, Hunter. So at Zapier, one of the keys to attracting the right talent, to having a lean team, and to talent density for us is this concept of T-shaped talent. I don't know if people are familiar with this concept of T-shaped talent. I can give it a little bit of a rundown, but essentially it was a concept that was pioneered by McKinsey back in the 80s, and then David Guest coined the phrase in the early 90s, but it really gained popularity from the IDEO CEO, Tim Brown. And so T-shaped talent simply means that you're capable of a lot of things, but you're really an expert in one. So like truly think about the letter T. These are people who are very highly skilled subject matter experts in one area, which is like their core job. That's kind of the vertical piece of the T. But then they're also skilled in a broad range of other skills, knowledge, and experience. So that's kind of like the horizontal line of the T. The difference of this model versus another model is if you're just a subject matter expert, for example, you'd probably be a specialist. So you would be what we would call an I talent. And if you're on the other end of the spectrum and you're just good at a bunch of things, but maybe not the expert in one, like if you're earlier in your career or you're a generalist, that is more of like the generalist skill set. So T-shaped talent's right in the middle. And what we like about that is that it means that you are an expert in something, but you can also collaborate across disciplines and with other experts and support work outside your particular job function. So it's about both depth and also breadth. And what I like about that for hiring specifically means that we can prioritize talent that does have the experience we need, but also skills that are applicable to our broader business, other functions that they may work with or be asked to support. And then it's really a focus on the term, what we hear a lot is skills-based hiring, not about degrees, not about education specifically, but who can do the work? What are the different skills that you bring? And those are the things that we look for, because we want somebody who's not just going to be great in that role at that one time, but also what we call a great enterprise talent. So good for Zapier for the long run, potentially playing even a variety of different roles or bringing different skill sets to the team.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. Okay, so Sienna, let's keep it going here. I know you and I are both a big fan of the phrase work smarter, not harder. So what techniques can teams use to maximize productivity and efficiency within lean team structures?
Yeah, I love this. And I won't lean on the automation side because Tracy, that's your MO. But when I think about team structures and lean teams specifically, one of the most impactful things that we can do is actually understand the individuals that we're working with and their skills. So often as leaders, we assume that their only skill set has to do with what their current role or job description is right now. And in reality, they might be working in their zone of genius, they might be working in their zone of excellence, but really trying to identify what are the skills that they might have that you might not necessarily know about. And so something that we've been building out and talking about often is a skills-based audit. So really being able to understand from the individual point of view, from the collective point of view, so with others that they work with, and then as well from a manager and a skip level point of view, to really be able to say what are the skills that this individual has, and then also what are the opportunities for growth based on what we need in the organization. When we're also thinking about productivity, efficiency, etc., I really lean into centering collaboration and collective learning, right? We often get so caught up, everyone has their heads down working on their day-to-day work, and we often don't take a step back to say, how are our team members learning from one another? How are they collaborating? How are they gaining and giving more visibility where a problem over here might create 5 different opportunities because they have visibility? So when we're thinking about that productivity and efficiency, really focusing on what is our overall goal, how are we able to maximize that, and then also how are we supporting our team members in becoming more productive and efficient as well, really through a lens of learning.
Yeah, totally. And Tracy, I'd love to hear about your experience with that, and also if you could touch on the automation stuff that Sienna was alluding to there.
I can certainly touch on the automation stuff, but I was actually going to build off of what Sienna was saying too, because I just love that, Sienna, because what I'm also trying to often, dispel the myth of is that moving towards a leaner team or a more talent dense team, it almost sort of implies just on the surface of like the company is gaining, but the employee is losing, right? Like we have to do more with less. And I don't necessarily think that that has to be the case if done well. I think moving to a more talent dense organization, especially with, again, T-shaped talent, which we love at Zapier, can be really win-win. Like companies can have more capable teams, but individuals can also be supported and pushed to grow and develop skills that might make them even more effective in their zone of genius, as you say, but also build skills that are outside of their zone of genius so they become more marketable in the future, right? It's also about personal development, about interest, and about being just engaged in different types of work, more opportunities to learn, more impact. So I just completely agree with you there. But on the automation piece, I think what a talented organization also doesn't mean is that people just work more hours. Instead, at Zapier, we really talk about sharpening the focus of where they're putting their time. So because we're an automation platform and we obviously use our own product, we have a core value of build the robot. And that means we're constantly seeking ways to automate the tedium or the admin work existing in like a typical version of your job so that we can focus on the work that humans do best, which is often the creative, the deep thinking work, the like relational work, especially if you're in TA. And so maybe that's more unique to Zapier, but we see automation and AI as tools to help each individual employee spend their very, very precious time on the things that matter and not just like copying over data or sending reminders to people, right? If you can automate those little things that you do day over day that suck up your time, but aren't truly engaging or value add in like your life and the way that you really like to think about your work, then if you can automate those things, you can focus on the stuff that is often even more engaging for the individual. So that's how we think about it at Zapier. And we use our tool significantly in order to push ourselves to say, hey, if you're doing something multiple times, try to find a way to automate it so that you don't have to be spending your time doing that stuff.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. And that is really key. Tracy and I talked a little earlier, like I'm a big fan of Zapier for my life and my work as well. And that's really been my experience too, is once I can identify something I've repeated a few times, then it's like, oh, this is the same process every time. And this is taking me an hour every time I do it. But if then I just take maybe an hour to build it, then it takes seconds to do it from now on. My heart started fluttering and nerding out to be like, wow, I wonder what like the Zappians build. Is it like the Emerald City?
We aspire to that. I wouldn't say we're quite there yet. The technology is changing so rapidly, but yes, we celebrate when people find an automated solution to something. So it's really a part of our culture too.
Yeah, that's so cool. So Tracy, how would you define and measure success within your lean team? So celebrate these ways, you find new solutions, and what metrics or indicators do you rely on to ensure your team is not only meeting goals, but also thriving, surpassing the goals?
Yeah, I think that's really key what you said, meeting goals and thriving. So I think a core attribute of talent density is the extent, how we define it at Zapier, is the extent to which people and teams are unusually impactful, having an outsized impact for their level and their role. So that actually means you can measure success in some of the same ways, similar to like KPIs and goals, right? So it depends on the company, it depends on the role, but if you're a company that tracks, if you're in support, like tickets per hour or tracks any sort of unit per hour, you actually can measure that. But you can also measure internal mobility, promotions, other forms of career trajectory that would come from really investing in upskilling your workers too. I think there's also a number of things you can qualitatively measure, like you can reflect on how those goals get achieved, which is something that we really focus on when we think about even our performance management systems. We think about, is this goal getting achieved through collaboration, through being agile, through being proactive? So I think there's the actual measures of productivity that every company has. You're not going to have a team that just throws those out the window, but it's really how you do the work. And then I think you can measure thriving in really simple ways. I mean, you can obviously look at retention, you could look at hours worked and making sure that you're not overworking or burning out your workforce, right? PTO days taken, making sure people are hitting goals and achieving a healthy balance. Or for us at Zapier, we might look at, are people utilizing their learning and development budget? Do they have time to do that? What are their engagement scores look like? Are they able to get their work done in normal hours and decrease feelings of burnout? So we put a lot of emphasis on the how, but I don't think you can ever throw away the what, right? For a business to actually function.
Yeah, totally. How about you, Sienna?
Yeah, no, I love this. +1 to everything that Tracy was saying. And I'm going to throw an unpopular opinion out here, something I'm a fan of, but I also think something that's really important as well in regards to what Tracy was talking about of like the typical KPIs that organizations, departments, and individuals have, especially if you are a company that might have gone through various reorganizations. I also encourage leadership to take a step and a pause and say, what are our organizational goals? Do we need to revisit those? Are we able to meet those goals with a leaner team than what we might have? So that there's also this sentiment of transparency and alignment, both with the individual to the department and the organization, to be able to look at, are we able to do more with less? But then also going back to what Tracy was saying, are we able to do that with the individuals that we have? And so if not, what might we be reprioritizing or tweaking or focusing on a little bit more? And I think when we're also thinking about how to make it stick, it's going back to, how does every day task, automated or not, matter? So tying individuals' work to worth. So it doesn't just feel as if they're doing their work day in and day out, but really saying, how is this driving impact, and having them be able to see the much bigger picture. I also think something that's really interesting and aligned is something that I often like to do that's really impactful is a time and energy analysis, right? So really being able to sit down and work with your team and say, over a week, my teams, we used to use Toggle, which is a tool that I love, and really being able to understand, where does your time go? Is that time where you need to be going? Where does your energy go? What drains you? What pours back into your cup? And also looking at proactive versus reactive work, right? And so really being able to take a pause and talk to your team members to understand, okay, let's do a quick audit. Is this where your time needs to be going? What do we need to be fixing fundamentally to help move, oh my goodness, sorry, just tweaked out, to help move the needle forward, similar to what Tracy was saying. And then also being able to understand the systems that we need. And I think from a people point of view as well, are people engaged, right? They could be doing great work, but if they are burnt out, you might not necessarily see them as engaged. Are we thinking about, what does inclusion look like with lean teams as well? Is everyone having a voice? Does everyone have an opportunity to be heard and to also have the opportunity to learn new skills? And the last thing I'll just share is at PowerToFly, we have unlimited PTO, which is a blessing. And it's also something that we think about of, are people actually using their PTO? Do more people have an opportunity to do that in their roles than others? And really starting to implement some of the minimums that people need to take, because with unlimited, you can either take as much as you want, and sometimes you can't, or you don't take any. So really thinking about creating structures to also support that, and mental health days, et cetera, so that people also value taking time off to really be able to pour back into themselves.
Can I actually add on to that too, Sienna? Because I was just like not like I was just like a bobblehead. I was like nodding on everything that you were saying here. But one thing that really stood out to me is the impetus of leaders to have clarity and focus in their work. I think when you have a leaner team, or more talent dense team, you can't just do everything and do more. You have to really focus on the most essential work that matters. And that is a responsibility, sure, of individuals, but really of leadership. And so I like the frame that Zapier uses with talent density, because it doesn't mean that we just aim to hire what I would call the Netflix model, like the absolute subject matter expert, pay them top dollar, and then just like expect them to just be amazing. Like, we're not going to replace all of our early career engineers with staff engineers and just say, we're so talent dense now, we can do more with less people, right? Instead, it's really about ensuring that not only we're hiring strong talent, but as an organization, we're taking responsibility as a company to cultivate great talent, develop, upskill, and enable employees to thrive. And a lot of that is so many of the things that you said around burnout, around monitoring burnout, around clarity, focus, prioritization, so that people can really actually thrive. So I just love that.
Yeah, I love it. And the keeping track for ourselves on the day-to-day of checking in, and like Sienna said, using different tools that can help us with that. And Toggle was mentioned, and you know what I just looked up? Toggle has a Zapier integration, Sienna. So you might, yeah, okay, So friends listening, know that can be stored, organized, help you see that easily. So you both work, or rather we all work here for global companies with remote workforces. So what are some best practices for fostering a collaborative and high-performing team environment, especially when dealing with different time zones and cultures? I'm going to start with Tracy first, but as we mentioned earlier, Senna's at 9 o'clock right now. So right now, live in action.
Yeah, well, we've always been remote since we were founded in 2011, even when it wasn't really popular. So humbly, I think Zapier does remote really well, like everything from all of our hiring to onboarding to everything that we do. And we only get together as a company once a year. But a few examples of some of the things we do, I think it's in the small stuff that's like very much in our culture. So we have, different groups we engage for what we call donut chats, which are like random paired conversations with people all over the company. And the conversations are no business, just informal, get to know each other, get to broaden your understanding of the company. We also have fun channels in Slack, everything from fun investing in personal finance to fun parenthood to fun questions that I feel silly asking out loud or something like that, right? We also have actual events that we do virtually. Many of them are put on by our employee resource groups, like cooking and cookie decorating and virtual meetups. So we have a number of like small things that we do structurally to continue to build this culture of collaboration, but we're also a really highly async culture. And that has its pros and cons. It's not for everybody. Because we're a global company, we don't want to force people to meet on one specific time zone all the time, right? So we do a lot through video recordings in Loom, written communication, Slack communication, and we acknowledge that people will answer on their own time within their normal working hours. And there's just a great culture around understanding that, which I also think helps with like lessening sometimes the urgency of getting like an immediate answer in 2 minutes. So those are just some of the things that we do, some for fun and some to really just facilitate our async remote culture.
Awesome. Sienna, as you are living, breathing, doing it in this moment.
No, I love this. And also just plus one of what Tracy was saying, PowerToFly has also always been a remote first company as well. And actually just today we had an org call talking about async and remote work culture. And I think going back to what we were saying, it's not just about the work that we're doing, but the way that we work, right? So when we're thinking about being in different time zones, but also we have a very global team with folks across the world. I'm pretty sure I have like 7 different nationalities on my team of 10, right? So really thinking about how are we creating space, yes, in the work, working asynchronously, scheduling messages in Slack, et cetera, but Also really learning the cultural differences from each individual, but not just through the lens of where they're living, but also what are people's learning styles, right? Is text better? Is video better? Is an audio note better? Really being, and this is actually something that's like a quick actionable tip, something that works really well and that I've done both within PowerToFly and with other organizations that we work with is actually surveying your team to understand, how do you work best? How do you take in information? Do you prefer scheduled Slack messages, or you know what I mean? So really being able to lean in and ask some of the questions to be able to help you all as leaders really inform that way of working. But the last thing that I would just say is creating moments for intentionality, right? We can often get caught up in what we're doing and what the outcomes are, but who is Hunter? Who is Tracy? Right? How are you talking about, again, the different things that make us, especially in a remote world? And the last thing that I would just say that has really stood out to me, having lived in Spain for the last 10 years and having such a global team, you might not always be able to meet up with other individuals. And so we try, in the past, we've tried to have regional meetups. So we actually had a meetup of, I think, 8 folks on our team who were living in Spain. They came to the town that I lived in and we spent a weekend together. And I learned more about these individuals in a weekend than you might have ever in a meeting or in a Slack. So trying to create moments and opportunities for that across the board, depending on how your company works, but really thinking about, again, the intentionality in how can we be able to meet people where we're at and also center that inclusion, taking into consideration different time zones and cultures in a remote world.
Yeah, absolutely. So friends, we have just 25 minutes left, if you can believe it. So keep asking your questions. We got several great ones in the chat now that I'm going to start peppering in. So thank you so much and keep them coming. So we have some really interesting questions here, and I'm going to rephrase this a little bit. And someone was sharing about how there's been so many rounds of layoffs and how that's affecting people's work morale and their results. So how can managers effectively communicate to leadership that these continued layoffs are severely impacting productivity and employee morale, and especially when there's been previous warnings that have been ignored and employees are overworking just to avoid the job losses?
Ella, can I go first, or Tracy, do you want to go first?
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm still processing the question because it's a really great one. I think the first thing that I would say is like, what is the story that you need to tell and who do you need to tell it to? Right? Because again, I think especially if you're dealing with various rounds of layoffs, feeling as if you might be raising a flag, I would almost suggest that you adapt the approach and the messaging and being able to speak in the language of those, again, whose buy-in you need to have. And I also think, again, Hunter mentioned this at the beginning, but data is key, right? So if you're seeing like gaining data either from an engagement survey, but also being able to say, hey, my team is working 10 to 12 hours each day, or we're seeing that we're having higher attrition rates than ever, to really be able to paint a picture so it doesn't seem as if it's just based off of feeling or emotion or overwhelm, but you're actually creating a story that makes it at least a little bit easier for whoever's on the receiving end to understand, to conceptualize, and then to consider if and or how action can be taken. Tracy, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts as well.
I mean, I think you said it really well. I always go back to data, especially when I'm trying to convince business leaders or an executive team of anything. And so I think there's data that can, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, to be clear, that you can start to collect around, employees feeling burnt out, retention, people leaving for different roles, again, engagement scores, even doing like a pulse survey and saying like, this is how your workforce is feeling. And also here's like the productivity that's actually happening. I mean, I'm a big believer of like, if a workforce isn't engaged, if I'm not engaged as an individual, I'm probably not doing my best work. And so it becomes like a business critical need. And I think using whatever data you have at your disposal to sort of paint the picture and share the narrative of like, this is what's happening. And so we need to have an intervention in the way that we're thinking about this. Now, I recognize that that can be easier done at some companies versus others, depending on what the type of work is. But I think the point there is to like think about the narrative that really shows that a change needs to be made. And that often like making some of those changes will show probably like pretty short-term results that will then build your case for making those changes further down the line.
Yeah. We got a
Can
question in
I?
the chat
Oh,
about, oh, sorry, go ahead, Sienna.
that's okay. Really quickly, just in we're ping ponging, but just in another response to that that I think could be really useful for this group as well. Excuse me, is also coming at it from a lens of understanding and with the intention of being able to improve again the employee experience, which will then which will then improve company results, right? Because again, thinking about what matters to the people that you're talking to, really being able to see that. Sorry, one second. Really being able to see that this is something that does matter to them, but they just might not be able to be seeing it yet, but it doesn't want to feel like an attack. Because oftentimes, again, organizations might be in a space where they can't hire more individuals or there are some things that they can't change. So really thinking about it as, I want to be able to help support us as a collective move forward from this tough time versus everyone's frustrated, we don't like this, and the change needs to happen. Just because sometimes the perspective of how you come into the conversation as well can make it more or less easily received.
Yeah. And since we're ping-ponging now, that person jumped in as well, and they were saying, oh, I should have shared that the engagement and productivity data has been shared with the leadership. So at what point in our profession do those professionals have to stop falling on the sword because we cannot influence positive change? So when you feel like you're in a bind, right? Like, what do we do when we're in a bind? Because sometimes work can be very hard, right?
Yeah. I think that's a tough situation. I'm sure so many of us have been in that too. I love what someone is saying also in the chat around understanding the transparency on both sides. But I think just as small things that when I feel that way with my manager, I'm very clear around here's the things I can accomplish and the impact it will have. Like, and here's the things I can't. Is this prioritization right? Again, it goes back to like prioritization and focus. I really believe that we do our best work when we can be clear and focused on what we need to do and not have, our energy pulled in a lot of different directions, which it seems like when we keep getting overloaded with stuff, that happens. And so this doesn't work for everyone. And it really, depends on the relationship with your manager, but I always try to focus on managing up and encourage my team to do the same when they say like, here's what I can do. Here's what I'm deprioritizing. Does this seem right? Would you say that I'm prioritizing the right things? And then you at least get clarity on what really, really matters. And you might be surprised that they say, yep, actually, this is important, but it's not urgent. Deprioritize that. So I think it at least opens up a conversation. Again, that's not the answer maybe you're looking for, but it's something that has definitely helped in the micro interactions in my case, my experience.
That's super valuable. We had another question in the chat that I'm going to pitch over back to you, Tracy, as it's calling out T-shaped and I-shapes. Oh. So how can managers encourage I-shaped specialists to become more versatile T-shaped professionals? But when the team is resisting potentially by they don't want to expand their skills because instead they're asking for additional pay or they want you to hire someone else. Because this is considered to them outside of their expertise. So given the budget constraints of some of the market right now, how would you encourage fostering this T-shaped expansion?
Yeah. Well, when I hear that question, I mean, there's a number of ways you can approach it. One would be in the hiring process, you start hiring and setting those expectations for T-shaped talent. But assuming that can't happen here because you have a team full of I-shaped specialists, I think it really becomes a mindset and culture shift, which is easier to do, obviously, if you're the leader of that team, and a little bit harder to do if you're trying to influence the culture of an entire organization in which you would need like leadership support. But there's actually 4 things that I lean on with my team to this point in terms of mindset that I talk about a lot with my folks too. It's like the first one is this idea of one team, one mission. Like it has to be clear that everyone's working towards the same thing. It's not a competition. It's not territorial. And so we find that when people are most concerned with their own KPIs and goals, they're less willing to pitch in or flex in, as my team likes to say, or to support others or do work that's not their expertise because they're focused on making sure that they have the time to do their specific work. So I think it starts with the knowledge and investment that we're all clear on like, what is the thing we're trying to accomplish as in a team? And we're invested in the idea that our team accomplishing that is the most important thing, which then like plays into like how we think about performance and, potential raises if you do that, et cetera. So that's one. I call it one team, one mission. The second thing is like managers have to know your people, know their skill sets and experiences, because every employee isn't just their job title, right? They're a whole person. They likely had many different professional experiences before they got to you and your company. So know their interests, know their skills. Are there places that they have experience in a different area where you can say, hey, I know you did that one time. Can you lean in here and start to build the examples and the case studies of people using their prior experience to flex in or lean into something else. So that's the second thing. The third thing is really demonstrating what flexibility looks like and its benefits. So once you start, maybe picking off a few people who are more open to this, utilizing them as case studies and showing, wow, like we had this great benefit because this person was able to lean in here that made the work go faster. They were able to build additional skills, really show that. And then the fourth thing is actually reward flexibility. I definitely understand that you can't, and a lot of times probably shouldn't be paying people more if you're asking them within their work constraints to lean into skills that they have, but you can actually reward flexibility in different ways. You can shout out examples, you can have praise. If you do spot bonuses or something, if there is a way to reward it monetarily, then I think that's helpful. We write cross-functional work into goals. So it's a part of people's goals to sometimes lean into other teams. And I think that just sets the stage as like, this is what we do. This is part of your performance. How agile you are and how you're able to do this actually is what we expect of your role. And so again, it's like a culture change. It's a mindset shift. And there's definitely challenges with that. But I think the more that you lean in there with the team you already have, the more people will see it, live it, experience it, and see its benefits too.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. I love that. It is such a mind shift. And I like flex in. That's fun. I hadn't heard that one before. Sounds sporty. Okay. Sienna, as you may know, working in small teams can be stressful sometimes. I don't know if that's been your experience, but how can teams avoid burnout and also practice workplace psychological safety in what can be sometimes a stressful environment?
Yeah, I love this question. And I can also, yes, I love this question. And I was thinking about the context of previously when I was at PowerToFly, I was running our DEIB team, which was one of our smallest teams, but served a large number of organizations holding interim roles within those organizations. So imagine not just dealing with your own role, but then also the complexities of 10 different companies and the consulting that you're doing there. When we think about stress and when we think about doing that with small teams, I think one of the most important things that we can think about is being able to support mental health and wellness. That sounds very, yeah, we've been talking about this for years, but what does that actually mean, right? This means that for you, especially if you are a leader, also being able to start off by leading by example. How do you work? When are you replying? How are you scheduling your calendar? How are you embracing people taking time, not just taking time off, but also thinking about what does their work look like in the day-to-day? And so I really encourage that as leaders, we're leading by example, but then also really focusing on psychological safety by giving your team ownership, right? Again, have you ever been working on a project that you've loved so much that you spent 5 hours doing it? That feels very different than when you're doing 5 hours of a task that you despise, right? And so I think especially if you're a manager or a leader, you're there to give direction to your team, but looking to your team for answers, right? How are you empowering them to really take the lead in their work? And I also think small integrative tips is integrating deep work time into the calendar and honoring that, right? So if you're in a culture of many meetings, stress, things being very reactive and that need to happen now, start slowly but surely putting an hour block of do not book focus time and declining the meetings that are booked there. Writing in the descriptions why it's important for you to take this time. putting up Slack messages saying, I'm slow to reply. Anyone who works with me on our team knows that I do this all of the time. But again, it's really thinking about, again, not just what does vacation look like or how do you meditate in the morning, but how do you work during the times of work as well? And then again, how are you celebrating and sharing that? So if someone's taking 2 weeks of PTO, 2 weeks of PTO, paid time off, they don't feel bad about it or guilty, but we celebrate it. Share your photos. How did it go? Do you feel rejuvenated, so that it creates this type of culture where individuals are able to not feel bad or guilty about taking time off, especially just because we live in such a fast-paced society, but also being able to say, as leaders, how are we also mirroring what we would like to have for our employees to see? Because oftentimes we say, yeah, take the day or whatnot, and then we're replying at 11 p.m. at night, right? And so I think, again, it's also leading by example and being able to give that opportunity as well. And Tracy, I'm interested in hearing.
Yeah, I love all of that. Tracy?
I mean, I don't know if I could say it better than Sienna did. I think like the
That's how I feel all the time, Tracy.
I'm just gonna leave it there. I don't want to repeat things that she said. I actually think it quite resonated with me, Sienna.
Yeah. And it really is true. Like when I first started working at PowerToFly and I went to book Sienna on her calendar, I was like, wow. It was like, you can't even imagine, like it's just fully stacked. But in the morning, it's like very clear. Her morning is very clear of like, these are do not book times. And it's very clearly communicated why. And then I like learned something about Sienna too, because she shared why she was booked out every day and was like, oh, that's really cool, like what you're doing. And like,
yes, sir.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I was like, I'm not gonna say
though, is that the thing that I love about this, and honestly, like from like speaking to all of you, sorry, it's also late, so my brain is starting to tweak out, but leading by example, right? So Hunter was saying he looked at my calendar, he saw the description, he understood why. Something I noticed, I'm a creep, but little by little, other individuals started putting do not books on their calendar. Yep. They started blocking off times. They started taking days. And so again, we think that the actions that we take don't really matter, but little by little, the actions that you also take and that you're reflecting, people will pick up on and then start integrating because they see that it serves them as well. Anyway.
100%. I'm glad you jumped in. Like I learned it from watching you, but this is a good one, luckily. So that I completely +1 that. Okay, friends, we have less than 10 minutes. Can you believe it? Time flies. So if you have any more questions, please drop them in the chat. I would love to hear from you before we sign off today. So a few more questions from me as well. So I would love to hear what's something, perhaps an unexpected talent or skill that someone on your team brings to the table that has surprisingly contributed to your team's success. Tracy?
Well, you mentioned this a little bit in my bio, but I started my career as a kindergarten teacher through Teach for America. So I taught for 2 years right out of college. And so I might have a bias here, but I think the unexpected talent or skill that I truly do see play out on any team is like great communicators and great teachers. Not just good writers, but like I think good writers, good visual designers, like those people who are just great at making things on Canva. It's the ability to break down really complex problems or complex topics to a relatable level to a variety of audiences in different ways, whether that's words or graphics or, a video or something that can help reach a lot of people and just make these complex topics very clear. I think that goes a very long way, and especially in an async remote culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tracy, we're soul sisters, because I was going to give a very similar example. Actually, in our team meeting today, we had a great example of this. So we do this thing where we have collective learning in our team meetings where different individuals are able to talk about either projects or things that they've done. And something that really stood out was one of the individuals in our team has done this extensive market research, aligning it to our organizational goals, et cetera. And it really made me think about the ability to research, analyze, understand your audience, tell the story, and then serve others with knowledge, right? And that goes back to what Tracy was saying of taking a big cloud of a concept and really being able to make it understandable. And I also think my background is in psychology, so it's also like understanding who you're speaking to. If you have the ability or the skill to be able to say, okay, I know that Lori, Paula, Lynn, and Ria all value really different things. What is it that I need to do or shift in my messaging to be able to have it resonate with them? Because when we're able to do that, we're able to advocate in a much stronger way and also gain buy-in. And speaking from experience, I got so much practice working with our CFO on how to present really great numbers in an Excel sheet. Was not a strength of mine, but I realized that's what sways her. That's what allows for her to be able to have buy-in in a quicker way. So I learned how to do it, and then I was able to see how easier the process became instead of just me talking about the story and the vision, but really being able to say, let's get it in Excel. We know the language that she speaks, and then here's how we're able to move things forward, but across the board with anyone that you need to get buy-in or really be able to bring along a decision as well.
I love that. It's like speaking someone's business love language. We only have a couple minutes left. I'd love to hear, Sienna, I'll stick with you for now. If people want to learn more about today's topic or are looking for additional resources, what's something that you would recommend they check out?
Okay, so this might not seem relatable at all, but I would really recommend that we all check out the book Mastery by Robert Greene. It is a fantastic and very thick book that allows for us to really understand skills and the ways that we're all able to develop skills in different ways. So it's not your typical business resource, and we'll share real resources with you afterwards, but I really think that book does a phenomenal way in humanizing skills, mastery, and learning that makes it really applicable for you, for yourself, for your team, and for your organization as well. I know that we'll share more resources after, but I think that's one thing that just really stood out based on our conversation so far today.
Yeah, so cool. Bookmarking that. Tracy, anything new?
Yeah, I was trying to think of like other book recommendations off the top of my head. I mean, I'm very much like a podcast person myself. So I'll try to think of some. But I think I honestly think Reed's book is a really good regrounding, even though we can't all be Netflix or do all the things that Netflix does. But I think it gives you some good principles for talent density. And then Josh Bersin has also written some stuff recently around how to create talent density that I think has gotten some traction. So those are probably two places that I would explore.
Amazing. Amazing. So as we wrap up here, if there's one thing you'd like folks to take away from today and one actionable thing that they could do today, what would that be, Sienna?
Okay. I think for me, it would be really leaning into understanding, supporting, and elevating your people. Understand them, get to know them on a real level, learn what motivates them, and also learn what opportunities for growth that they might be interested in exploring that they just don't know exist yet. So really also encouraging them to learn how to advocate for themselves within the workplace to be able to support them in their career growth as well as your departmental and organizational goals.
Yeah. What about you, Tracy?
I would say that for any company, there's things, really concrete, tangible things that you can do to build a more talent dense organization, such as through hiring, like we talked about before, but also that so much of this is about mindset shifts and really finding, again, those case studies, those examples that start to build a culture around that. So specifically, if it's something like T-shaped talent, it's really investing and upskilling and supporting employees to thrive, and then letting that tell the story and build the narrative of what this can look like. So it takes time. It won't happen immediately, but if you have a plan and you start to think about how can I, in small ways, start to shift the culture, as well as do the concrete things, then I think you can get there truly quickly.
Yes. Brick by brick, stone by stone.
Yes.
Yes. Tracy, what's the best way for folks to reach out and keep the conversation going with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, and feel free to DM me or just reach out there. I'm not the best at LinkedIn. I'll just say that caveat. You'll see my profile is very sparse. Don't tell anybody. I am a talent professional, but I do try to respond as much as I can, particularly to DM. So feel free to reach out there or connect with me.
Amazing, Sienna. And then I'm also going to bring Krista back on too, just so, yeah, love to hear from you again, Sienna.
Absolutely. Yeah, same here. Please send me an invite on LinkedIn. Drop, hey, just attended the panel. Would love to continue the conversation. You definitely can. I might take a couple of days to respond. I do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I'm really excited to continue the conversation with all of you.
I love that. Yeah, I learned from you. Like, I'm like, I don't take new meetings on Mondays and Fridays. That's my boundary. I was like, I don't do that. So that way I can work better all week long. Krista, and for you?
Smart. Thank you. Yeah. So anyone can find me on LinkedIn. I just threw my profile in the chat here. You can also find us on our website. So that's talentcollectiveco.com. So looking forward to connecting.
Amazing. And yes, I am also on LinkedIn, Hunter Canning with a C. So thank you everyone for your participation today. Let's hear another digital round of applause for our amazing panel of folks today. Thank you so much, Sienna, Tracy, and Trista. It's so great to have all of you here. Krista, excuse me, I mixed your first and last name together. Come on, dyslexia. So good to have all of you here today. Always a pleasure. You can keep in touch with all of us here on all of the things. Scan the QR codes. That's the best way to do it. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, everyone.